Okay. Do we see thumbs up at home?
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right. So hey, welcome everybody to Finding a College That Fits. My name is Dan Raffety. I'm the director of college counseling at Elgin Academy. I also teach AP US history. And I'm going to talk to you all today about some techniques you can use to figure out what the best fit college is for you. And so we'll go through this presentation, and then at the end there'll be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, why didn't that work? There we go. Okay, so we at Elgin Academy use a system called Naviance for our college applications that also allows students to do college search features, put in criteria that they can use to help them determine some of their best fit colleges. If you don't have access to Naviance, or there's some other systems like it, Maya, Score, different schools will use different systems. But if you don't have access to that, one search feature that everybody can use is College Board. The same folks that bring you the SAT have a variety of college resources available at well, in this case, bigfuture.collegeboard.org. Or if you just ran a search for Big Future and College Board, you find that. Pretty much all Illinois students should have a College Board account because SAT is the preferred testing for Illinois public schools. So all students should have a College Board account or will have a College Board account after they take the PSATs. So this should be something that's available to everyone. And Big Future on College Board has a lot of the same search features that the system that we use, Naviance, has. And so I definitely recommend it if you've got, if you don't have a database system that your school uses. So on Big Future, you're going to find that you've got a variety of criteria that you can use to help you select college. You've got putting in test scores and selectivity, putting in your test scores and GPA, putting in the type of school, be it a public school, private school, religious school, etc. Location, if you're staying close to home, or if you're willing to go far away, or obviously someplace in between. Definitely a conversation for you to have with your family. What your preferences are in terms of campus and housing. And I'll go into a little more detail on some of these criteria as we go through this presentation. But campus and housing, do you want to make sure that there is on-campus housing available to you all 4 years? Are you in a situation where you're going to commute from home? Or do you want to make sure that you have the option of moving into an apartment off campus starting sophomore or junior year? So these are all things that you can put into the criteria. Taking a look at what sports and activities are available at the different colleges, how academic credit works, of course, paying. We'll talk a little more about that later. And then additional support programs. If you have learning differences that you want to make sure are accommodated, or you want to make sure that there's strong mental health support, things like that are all things that you can put into in this search engine to help you determine a college. And then also, of course, diversity, looking at the demographics of the college. Are they supporting, different religions, different ethnicities, things like that. These are all things that you should be thinking about as you start your college search, and also things that the College Board Big Future will allow you to put in. And right now, let me tell you that there's about 4,000 college options in the United States of America. There are a lot of schools out there. There are a lot of schools local. There are a lot of schools in nearby states, and there are a lot of schools, East Coast, West Coast, and the South. There's also a lot of schools overseas, if that's something you're interested in. I know that a lot of US students don't necessarily think about going abroad for college, but one advantage you could have to going to schools in United Kingdom is that a lot of programs are 3 years instead of 4. So you can actually graduate sooner than your peers who are going to school in the US. So just to give you some ideas of different things, different criteria you could have for the search and different options that are out there. So for criteria, and you can obviously add to this, but I'll give you some ideas of the criteria that you want to have as you start to think about the various options that are out there. I always tell students to start with geography. Okay, what's doable for you? What's doable for you and your family? But if you have the option, where would you like to be for the next 4 years, right? Where would you like to become an adult? And in some cases, your parents are going to say, oh, you can go 1 or 2 hours away or 5 or 6 hours away, depending, and then that's fine. You can certainly build a wonderful search based on that. Illinois and Wisconsin have, and some of our other nearby states have fantastic colleges. But if you've got the option of going far away, think about where you'd like to be, right? Would you like to go to the East Coast? Would you like to go to the West Coast? Would you like to go to the South? Think about what geography means to you and what part of the country you'd like to be in to get your college education. Another big thing to think about is the size of the school. All right, so we've got basically 3 different sizes of schools. You've got your classic flagship big state universities. You've got University of Illinois, you've got Illinois State, University of Wisconsin-Madison, just over the border. You've got a variety of very big places, and those are wonderful. But that's going to be a certain kind of college experience. That's going to be a situation where you're probably going to have intro classes with between 300 and 1,000 people. Think about if that's something that you're comfortable with. Then you've got more medium-sized schools that are between, say, 5 and 15,000. And places like that locally would be DePaul or Loyola or Bradley in Peoria, Illinois, Marquette up in Milwaukee. Those are medium-sized schools. A lot of them are religious affiliated. That tends to be true, not always, but that does tend to be true of a lot of medium-sized schools. And that'll give you an experience that obviously is not quite as big as, say, University of Illinois, but is not tiny either. And then, of course, you've also got liberal arts schools. You've got small liberal arts schools. You got some wonderful ones nearby, Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, Lake Forest College in Lake Forest. We've got Beloit College across the border in Wisconsin, Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. These are schools that are about 1,000 to 3,000 students, and they can often be overlooked because schools like U of I are going to get a lot of attention. But the advantage to schools like Knox and like Lawrence and like Beloit is that they emphasize undergraduate education and nothing else. They are there purely to serve undergraduates. Their faculty are there to be teachers first and researchers second, which can be different sometimes from larger schools. And they can be absolutely wonderful places to go to school, even if they're not the ones that you see the most bumper stickers of. So I would definitely recommend for all of you that as you begin your search, take a look at all of those different sizes of schools. All right, and you can see a lot of them very easily. Lake Forest College is 45 minutes from here. Beloit, about an hour across the Wisconsin border. So I would say check out a few small schools, see if that's a campus environment that you like. Check out some medium-sized schools like DePaul, like Loyola, like Bradley or Northwestern. And then, of course, check out some big state schools as well. Go see University of Illinois, go see Illinois State, go see University of Wisconsin. Northern Illinois would be another sort of medium-sized place as well to take a look at. But get a feel for what kind of campus is going to work best for you, the kind of environment that you want to have in college. Because every student that I work with they all have a different priorities. Some students will say to me, I really want to be like Elgin Academy, the school that I work at is very small. And some students want to mimic that environment in college. Other students are like, I want the total opposite. I want to go root for a Big Ten team and just get a completely different experience. And so my advice to all of you is to visit several of these places and get a feel for what is going to feel best for you. Also, with academics test scores, you're going to need to make sure that you have a list of colleges that you can get into, at least some of them. All right. And we have some local places that are incredibly difficult to get into, like Northwestern and University of Chicago, schools that have below 10% admission rates. And I'm not saying don't look at those, please do, but understand that you want to build a list that's going to have some more favorable admit rates as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. Cost and financial aid, obviously, is a big thing for a lot of students in this process, and looking at places that are going to be affordable. And I'll talk a little bit about some things you can use to determine that as we go through. And another thing too is to determine whether or not the school's got support services that will work for you, whether that's academic support, whether that's mental health support, whether that's physical support. These are all things to keep in mind as you look at schools. So on Big Future, you can see that they've got ways of breaking down the search in terms of setting. Do you want a rural school, right? School that's out kind of in the middle of nowhere. University of Illinois is out there, although it is a college town unto itself. So Urbana-Champaign certainly becomes a small city when college is in session. But there are some smaller schools that are definitely much more remote. Cornell College in Iowa or DePauw in Indiana come to mind. Do you want a suburban campus? Do you want something like Lake Forest or Elmhurst, which are in the suburbs, a little bit best of both worlds? You're not necessarily in the hubbub of the city, but you can get into it if you'd like to. And then, of course, urban campuses. And with urban campuses, sometimes you're going to see schools that are in the city. The city is their campus. DePaul is an example of a school like that. University of Illinois Chicago is an example of a school like that. There you go. There you go. Yep. But then say a school like Loyola is basically within Chicago city limits, but it has its own campus. It has its own sort of self-contained area. So that's kind of a nice best of both worlds. But that's something to think about because even within urban schools, you can find differences between, do you have a sort of classic green space campus, or literally are your classrooms in a downtown area, right? DePaul is a local example of that, but to give you some examples beyond Boston University in Boston, Massachusetts, that is very much an urban campus. NYU, New York University, is very much an urban campus. But that's something to think about. Are you comfortable in that? Is that appealing to you? Or would you rather have a more classic campus experience? And then also think about, do you want to be at a place where students live on campus, where that's the expectation, is that most students are going to live there. You've got students coming from all over. Or do you want to be at a commuter school? Do you want to be at a place that is easily accessible from where you live? These are things that you need to discuss with your family and think about what's best for you. There can be a lot of reasons why a commuter school makes more sense if you've got family responsibilities, if you have a job at home that you don't want to give up for college. These are things to think about as you approach this search. And then another thing is, on-campus housing must be guaranteed for first-year students. I can actually name some schools that right now are not guaranteed. For instance, University of Tampa in Florida, they over-enrolled last year. They probably don't want me to say this, but I'm going to. And my students who are planning on matriculating there, they have to apply for housing as a freshman, which is not something I had to do when I went to college, and not something that I think most college students expect to do. So that is definitely something to look into. But also something to think about is, do you want to make sure that you have housing guaranteed, not just for freshman year, but for the rest of your time there? Or are you kind of excited to get into apartment life as soon as you can? I'm somebody who preferred to stay on campus for all 4 years, but I certainly know a lot of people who are very excited to get out. And you should definitely look into questions you can ask admissions reps. Is that available? Is that something you can do? All right, type of school, and that can be broken down a number of different ways. You know, of course, you could go the 2-year or community college route. That's certainly something you could do for an associate's degree, or with the intention of transferring to another school down the line. And that is definitely a real cost-saving way to go about the college process these days. So definitely can be a wonderful option for a lot of people. So definitely consider community colleges like Elgin Community College, like Harper College in Palatine. There's obviously some really wonderful community colleges in this area. Or if you're like, nope, I want to do 4 years, I want the classic 4-year experience, you know, think about that. But finances can definitely play a role in that, and that is definitely a conversation that you should have with your family. Then colleges will break down into public or private colleges. Public schools are, of course, state-sponsored schools like the University of Illinois, like Illinois State, like Northern Illinois, University of Illinois, Chicago. Often the tuition is cheaper for in-state students, and that can be a wonderful option. Those can be wonderful options for any number of reasons. Those are great schools regardless, but could definitely be appealing because the tuition is a little cheaper. But I will say this, with private colleges, they will often have a pretty scary price tag, okay? You will see, oh boy, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year after room and board. And you may look at that and say, nah, I don't want any part of that. However, what you don't know is after you apply and after you submit your financial aid information, the FAFSA, you may find that private schools become cheaper than public schools because they often offer a lot of merit scholarship aid and or need-based financial aid. So merit is the scholarship money that you earn for your GPA, for your test scores, for taking hard classes, involvement in extracurricular activities and things like that. And then need-based financial aid is based on you and your family's financial income, so on your resources, okay? So my advice for all of you is to take a look at both public and private institutions. And I know a lot of people will sort of have an instantaneous, like, I'm gonna look at public schools, that's the cheaper tuition, that's what I'm gonna do. And I certainly understand why people do that. But I would recommend take a look at a few private colleges as well. They often have pretty deep pockets, and they can often be very generous with merit aid. And schools like Knox, schools like Lake Forest, schools like Lawrence, schools like Beloit, I have seen them offer some very generous merit aid packages, okay? So I would say don't overlook the private schools. I'm frankly not going to spend a lot of time on for-profit schools. For-profit schools are usually not very good, and I would recommend you don't look at them. And then, of course, school size, I just talked a little bit about that, small, medium, large. Also, something to think about is single-sex or co-ed colleges. Most colleges and universities are co-ed, but there are still a few single-sex schools out there. A number of all women's colleges on the East Coast, for instance, like Smith or Holyoke or Wellesley, Sweetbriar, which is in Virginia. And then fewer all men colleges, although there's Wabash in Indiana and Hampton-Sydney in Virginia. But think about whether that's something that you'd want to make a part of your college search. And then, of course, also religious affiliation. A lot of, Catholic, a lot of Jesuit schools. Loyola's a Jesuit school. Marquette's a Jesuit school. DePaul is a Catholic school as well. But you can also certainly find Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois is a religious school, or Hillsdale in Michigan. Think about whether that's something that you want to make a part of your search. And I will also say that with religious schools, there's sort of degrees of how intense the religious requirements are on campus, all the way from schools where you probably wouldn't even really notice that they're religious unless they tell you, down to schools that are going to require you to go to chapel 2 or 3 times a week. Okay. So that's something to think about as you develop your college preferences as well. Geography, as I said, start your search locally, investigate different types of schools. Even if your intention is to go to school as far away as humanly possible, and your parents will let you do that, I would still say go take a look at what's in your backyard, look at some small schools, look at some medium-sized schools, look at some big schools, figure out what kind of campus environment you like, because there are versions of all of those all over the country. All right. So if you're like, hey, I like liberal arts schools, but I don't really want to be in Illinois or Wisconsin, well, there's a ton of them in the East Coast. There's quite a few in Ohio. There's quite a few in California. Lots of options there. Exact same thing for medium-sized and large state schools, or large private institutions as well. Determine what your parameters are. Again, your parents might say to you, 3-hour radius, 4-hour radius, 5-hour radius. So you may have that choice taken from you, but that's obviously a conversation that you need to be having with your family. Again, determine your priorities in terms of size and setting, size of the school, and urban, suburban, rural, etc. And I definitely recommend make visits if you can. You may not, if you are applying far outside of state, you may not be able to visit all of the ones that you've applied to, but I definitely recommend, if you can, go check them out, because it's one thing to see a college's website, it's quite another to go visit it on campus. So definitely, if you can visit. I think when I put this presentation together, we were kind of smack in the middle of the pandemic, where students frankly could not visit colleges, or could maybe go walk around, but could not go into any building. A lot of that has been lifted, although you definitely need to check college to college whether or not they are fully open to tours and things like that. Some schools are gonna welcome you. Some schools are gonna say, nope, you can't go in buildings yet. They all have their own COVID policies. Definitely something to look at before you go. And setting up a visit is very easy these days. You basically just go to a college's admissions website. You can just Google the name of the school plus admissions visits. They will usually give you a calendar that you can just check the date on and the time that you want to go there. So it's much easier to do that than it was back in my day when you had to make phone calls. Obviously, keep in mind what majors you're interested in. Now, I will say most college students are going to change their minds. They're not going to stick with the major that they apply to a school with. So one thing to think about too is, what other options are out there if you change your mind about being a biology major or an English major or a business major or whatever. So it's always good to make sure that a school's got a variety of options academically. And also some other study options to think about. Do you want an accelerated or an honors program? If you could qualify for it. Do you think you want a double major? Do you think you want a minor? Do you think you want a double major, double minor? These are all things to consider. Do you want to study abroad? Do you want teacher certificate programs? Do you want ROTC? Do you want to do college online? You could do that these days. That's possible. You want to make sure there's support for English as a second language. Do you want opportunities for independent study? Or do you want self-designed major? Like some schools will literally let you choose your own adventure, which brings us to the next slide. It's going to reiterate a lot of what I just said. Think about the class sizes that you want at schools. Again, where I work, a lot of our students are in classes with 7 to 15 students. They're used to having a lot of teacher attention. They're used to being able to connect very easily with teachers. And so in some cases, those students want a very similar experience in college. Or are you looking forward to a big lecture hall with you and 500 of your closest friends? Some students really want that anonymity. So these are things to think about. Frankly, at a lot of bigger schools, you're going to find that classes sometimes get taught by teaching assistants instead of the professors themselves, especially at the lower level, the 100 level classes. And that is not the same as being taught by an expert in their field, which is what professors are supposed to be. This can be a reason to take a look at smaller colleges instead of larger colleges, or even some medium-sized. A lot of medium-sized schools will also guarantee that none of their classes are taught by teaching assistants. So definitely things to look out for and questions you should ask of admission drives. Again, well, opportunities for undergraduate research. Some schools make it very easy for undergraduates to participate in research, to work with their professors in projects and books and articles that their professors are working on, or allowing opportunities for students to develop their own research. That's something you're interested in doing. Definitely a good question to ask. And I will say again, often this is easier to do at a smaller school than at a larger school. Availability of support. What is available in terms of professors conducting office hours? Does the school have a writing lab, writing support to help you with your papers? And again, other support for learning differences, mental health, things like that. Also, yeah, are you interested in double majoring, minoring, designing your own major? There are some schools that welcome that have programs in place. So here's an example of, not a local example, but New College of Florida, which is in the sort of Tampa Bay area. That's a school that allows students to really choose their own adventure as they go through their educational experience and pull from a variety of different options to design their academic program. And that can sound like a daunting thing, but it can also make you a really unique job candidate down the line, or applicant to a graduate program or a PhD program. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're really into self-driving education, looking out for schools that have self-designed majors could be right for you. And another thing to think about is whether or not it's doable to graduate in 4 years. Are you going to have problems if you change your mind and you're going to have to recover those credits? And that might mean a 5th year of college. And that means more, expenses, more tuition that you have to pay. And this can actually be another reason why there can be some advantages to smaller schools. There are a lot of schools that will work very hard to ensure that you do graduate in 4 years. Whereas I've got some students right now at Iowa State who are going into their 5th or 6th year because they changed their mind down the line and they had to make up X number of credits to do that. So these are good things to think about as you look at the colleges, questions you can ask admissions reps, questions you can ask friends and family who are in college right now, because you don't want even more tuition added to that experience. And then another thing is, as you look at colleges, definitely check out their Office of Career Services, or whatever they call it. They'll have different names at different places, but every college should have this at this point, where basically they've got an office specifically to help you apply for jobs, to apply for internships, to help you build a resume, do mock interviews with you, things like that to help you get job ready. So as you visit schools, I would definitely recommend, if you have the option, go check out their career services office, check out the language that they have on their websites about it, because that is much bigger part of the college experience than when I was in school. All right. So all of these things are things that you should definitely keep in mind as you tour, visit colleges' websites, and speak with admissions reps. Please.
When our class is offered, I had a class I really wanted to take my bachelor's degree that was only offered in the summer.
Yep.
And that was a chunk of money I wasn't planning on taking.
Yep. Yep. That can be very frustrating, right? A, you got to pay for it. B, maybe you had to stay on campus when you wanted to go get a summer job. You know, these are all things to think about. And ask colleges, you know, how do you help students out if they change their major? And some schools will work very hard to make sure that happens. Others, not so much. So definitely a great thing to keep in mind. Okay, so of course, as you apply to colleges, we've got different rates of admittance, different expectations in terms of the grades that you earn, different expectations in terms of test scores. Let me pause on a minute though, for a minute, talk about test scores, because this is a unique time. So heading into the pandemic, 20% of all US colleges had become test optional. And in some cases, test blind, meaning test optional means that you have the option of submitting your test scores. If you like them, feel good about them, think they're showcasing you in a good light, or you have the option of not sending, of saying, I don't test well. That's not what I want to showcase. I'm a much better, paper writer. I'm a much better presentation giver. I'm much better when I don't have to do this at some random high school on a Saturday morning for 3 to 4 hours. All right. So 20% were test optional going into the pandemic. Pretty much every college, with the exception of Florida public universities, became either test optional or test blind amidst the pandemic. And many will remain that way next year as well. It's a little bit of a moving target. There are some schools that are moving back to requiring test scores, but there are more that will not. So this is something to look out for on a college's website, or talk to your guidance counselor, or ask the admissions reps as they come through, is whether or not they are test optional. And there are some schools that are even test blind, meaning they will not look at test scores at all. Some examples of that are the University of California and Cal State schools, by a state mandate, are all test blind. They will not consider your test scores at all. Illinois public universities by mandate are all test optional and will remain test optional for the foreseeable future. So again, if you feel good about your test scores, send them. If you don't, you don't have to. Please.
Do you think folks that are test optional are still disadvantaged at some schools?
No, not well. I'd have to answer that school by school, which would take me a very long time. But I've been having a lot of conversations with admissions reps at colleges throughout the country over the last few weeks. And there are plenty of colleges, and very competitive colleges, I should say, that are admitting 40 to 50% of their students test optional. So to give you an example of that, I spoke with a rep from Washington University in St. Louis, which is an incredibly competitive school. And she said they admitted 40% of this year's class test optional. So my advice to students is, if you look at what the mean test scores are for the schools that you're applying to, and if you're within that range or you're above it, then it would definitely make sense to send your scores. If not, it probably makes sense not to. And I would take colleges at their word if they're telling you that they're test optional. So
like an interesting skewing problem with those colleges.
it's definitely, there's a lot being sorted out with it. And I do think there are some colleges that have handled it better than others, although now we're into a second year. So they started doing it last school year, and have continued with it this year. So I do think that colleges have improved their models with test optional and will continue to improve it. Again, I would still encourage students, hey, try to do as well as you can on the tests. But if you are not happy with your results, you have the option now of submitting without them, which is obviously very different from when I was applying to college, and probably most of us were. Yeah, so definitely keep that in mind. Again, if you don't love your SAT scores, if you don't love your ACT scores, you have the option of not sending. I'm going to talk more about the selectivity on a different slide. Right. So the sort of classic idea of how you build a college list is obviously your priorities should be the campuses that you want to be on, the academic programs that you're excited about, things like that. But as you do that, you need to be mindful of what the acceptance rates are of these various colleges, all right? Because we can go all the way from community colleges that are open enrollment, right? Basically meaning that you graduated high school, as long as you have a diploma, you are able to attend, versus incredibly competitive schools like Northwestern or University of Chicago, which have below 10% admission rates, and then a whole lot in between. So one way to build your list is to sort of put schools into these different categories. I'll start at the bottom of the list, far reach, all right? These are typically going to be schools that have below 15% admission rates. These are schools where you, by the way, can have perfect GPA, perfect test scores, and still not be admitted to them. Okay, I can say University of Chicago, Georgetown, obviously the Ivies, Stanford, Northwestern. These are schools where you may say to yourself, I have done everything I possibly can to be the best student, and it still doesn't matter. Because they're going to admit their sports teams first, and then B, they're going to choose students who've developed a patent or have something published or have something that most teenagers just don't do. Okay, so those would be your far reaches. And my advice is, if you are interested in applying to schools like that, you can do that, but don't go more than 2 or 3 on your list. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. Okay. Then you have reaches, which are basically a little easier to get into than the far reaches. Those would be a 30% admission rate down to about 15. And those are more or less in the same category where you can still feel like, hey, I did everything I could, and this is not quite working out for me. Then you got schools that I would call possible, meaning pretty good chance you're getting in, but not definite, okay? Then you've got likely schools that should be very confident that you're going to be admitted to, probably get some scholarship money as well, down to safety schools, and these are schools that would be a slam dunk for you, and should be a slam dunk, not just in terms of getting admitted, but likely in terms of getting admitted into an honors program, getting substantial merit aid, and you can tell a lot of this based on the percentage, the percentage that schools enroll, and also based on how many students are applying versus how many students are getting admitted. And colleges should publish basically all of that information. A lot of that would be available on College Board or on the college's website, or a simple Google search usually takes care of it. Thinking about what you want to get involved in college and what activities are out there. So obviously sports can be a big one. If you want to be a recruited athlete, that's kind of a different conversation about how college works, although that can be very different from Division I to Division II to Division III. But if you are interested in that, then you need to get registered with NCAA, and you need to make sure that you are reaching out to coaches. Obviously talk with your coach or your athletics director about how that works. But also with sports, you may also just want to make sure, hey, they've got intramurals, right? They get intramural soccer, or they've got club soccer, which is not, you don't recruit for club sports. You do play other schools. but it's not the same level of intensity in the recruitment process. So these are things to look out for as you view what options colleges have. And then, of course, other activities. You know, they have choral groups, they have a cappella groups, they offer dance, film, literary magazine, television station, theater. Is theater available to students who are not theater majors, if that's something that you'd like to stay involved in? Likewise with music, right? Do they have music available to regular students, or do you have to be like admitted into the conservatory in order to do it? So these are all things to look out for. And obviously, you know, College Board, the big future is going to account for many of these activities, but not all of them. You should feel free to look at the college's websites or ask admissions reps about what activities are available. And then another thing to consider is whether or not you want to be a part of fraternity or sorority. Do you want to make that a part of your college experience? Do you want to make sure that colleges have frats and sororities? Or do you want no part of that? And do you want to attend a school that does not have Greek life? Or at least that Greek life does not dominate social life on campus? Okay, and that's something you can look at as the percentage of students who are involved in Greek life. And I'll also tell you that in some cases, the number that they publish is pre-pledging. So that number can actually go up after students pledge, right? After students are admitted. So some schools can go from like 60% to 90%, depending on how pledging works. So anyway, these are all things that you should keep in mind as you look at the various schools. Okay, this looks like the exact same thing. Right, so as you go and check out schools, obviously ask the admissions reps, obviously look at what the literature they have is. But another thing, you could really learn a lot about a college by just walking around, looking at the bulletin boards in the dorms, in the student union, in the various classroom facilities, right? You get an idea for what kinds of things are going on campus from those bulletin boards. I mean, I know we live in a time when everything's digital, but a lot of college students will still do things the old-fashioned way by passing out flyers, by pinning them up around campus or in the dorms or in the cafeteria. You get a real sense for what's available to you as you walk around a campus, just based on what you see on the walls. The other thing I recommend everybody do, if you have the time, is as you're touring a college, go sit in the student union, go sit in a coffee shop, go sit in a public space on campus, and just sit and people watch for an hour. You'll get a sense, are the students stressed? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they in a rush? Now, you do have to keep in mind what time of year you're doing this, because if you are there during finals week, clearly you're probably going to see students in a very different state than you would during orientation in August or September. But it still will give you a pretty good idea of the kind of flow of college life and the general demeanor of the students. So if you have the time to do this, I highly recommend you just take a break, sit down, the coffee shop, again, the student union, or even just a bench that's a nice day around campus in an area where you see a lot of students congregating. You get a real good sense for the vibe of the campus based on that. And keep in mind that unlike high school, you spend most of your time in college outside of class. Classes are intense, but they are run on a very different schedule than they do in high school. You know, you can possibly set up your schedule so you don't have classes on Fridays, or you have classes only in the afternoon. You just don't quote me on this because it's going to depend on what your requirements are. But especially as you go along in college, you get a lot more flexibility as to when your classes meet. And most of your time is going to be spent outside of the classroom. So you really want to think about what kind of environment you're going to be in for that. And if it's a place that you're excited to be at, or a place that seems like you can relax at, or, if it's, sometimes students will say, I hate the architecture of this school and I don't want to look at that for 4 years. And you know what? That sounds kind of ridiculous. That might be the best academic fit for them, period. But if that's not going to make them happy, if they're just hate the buildings, that can be a reason not to go. So these are all good reasons to check out the campus, spend some time there, and really see what's comfortable for you. Of course, another big part of this is the finances of it and whether or not a school is going to be able to accommodate your financial needs. So first of all, I recommend that all students fill out the FAFSA, the federal application for free student aid. You'll need to sit down with your family, pick up last couple of years tax returns and fill this out. But this is the application that gets you need-based financial aid, aid based on your family's finances. And I recommend that all students and their families do that, no matter what, whether you think you're going to get anything or not. Definitely something you need to do. It will become available October 1st for the class of that year. So the class of 2023 will become available October 1st. That, by the way, is not the deadline. That's simply when it becomes available for you to fill it out. Each college is going to have its own financial aid deadline, and that's something that you want to look at their website for. But yeah, I wanted to give you an example of in-state versus out-of-state for a state school. So this is University of Illinois' in-state costs versus their out-of-state costs. So of course, $30,000, a little over $30,000 for in-state, close to $50,000 out-of-state. And this is something to think about, especially if you're interested in out-of-state state schools. So if you're interested in University of Wisconsin-Madison or University of Iowa, look at what their rates are for out-of-state students. I will say there are some places that do have reciprocity with Illinois, meaning that they will give in-state tuition to Illinois students. Some examples of that would be Western Michigan University, or the University of Wisconsin satellites, like University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee or Oshkosh, not University of Wisconsin-Madison. They like to take Illinois students for all they're worth. But definitely something to consider, that, if you go to a state school out of state, you are likely paying almost as much as you would for a private school. And that a lot of those out-of-state schools are going to be more likely to give financial aid to their in-state students. Okay, so that's definitely something to think about. That, however, is not the case with private universities. All right, so here's Loyola's tuition, which is about $60,000 a year on campus. All right, that's a hefty price tag. However, I do know that Loyola can be very generous, especially with merit aid. I've seen them offer some very good merit aid packages to my students. And you'll see, all right, for a private school, it is exactly the same in-state as it is out-of-state, okay? But keep in mind that private schools, again, can offer a lot of merit aid, can offer a lot of need-based aid. And if you're thinking about going to school out-of-state, you're in many cases more likely to get a scholarship offer out of state than you are in state, because schools like this are getting a ton of applications from students in that state. So if you're interested in going far, you may find that a private school offers you an amount of money that is either comparable or even better to in-state tuition. All right, so definitely something to think about if you're willing to venture far out. And another thing that you should always do is colleges have what are called net price calculators. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to take your financial information and your academic information, and it's going to give you a prediction as to what kind of merit and need-based aid you will get at that school. Now, I will say net price calculators are not perfect. You'll never know exactly what kind of financial aid package you're going to get until you actually apply and are admitted to the school and they go through that process with you. But it can at least give you an idea of, oh, Loyola might be doable. Or, I don't know, a school in Ohio, Case Western Reserve might be doable as I look through the net price calculator. So I definitely recommend that you check this out. And the easiest way to do this is just take the name of the school and Google the name of the school and net price calculator. And basically all colleges will have that. This is, of course, Loyola's example. It's a little dated now, as you can see, 2016 tax return to be a little more recent than that. But this gives you an idea of how much aid you're going to get from the school. So definitely something to do with your family as you become interested in different schools. Right, and our recommendations, don't make decisions based on the sticker price, okay? Again, you may find that those astronomical looking tuition numbers at private schools come down substantially after merit aid and possibly need-based aid. And again, please use the net price calculators to inform your college list. And you can also look at cost the same way you would admissions requirements, right? So you could have a school that, hey, I love this place. I think I might get in, but I don't think they're going to give me a lot of money. We call that a financial reach or a financial far reach. But then you may find, all right, a little down the line, this school is going to admit me and give me some money, but it's not going to be astronomical, but it might be enough. All the way down to a school that's more than likely to give you a substantial amount of your tuition knocked off, all the way to possibly getting a full ride. Now that means you've got to be a pretty incredible student to get that, but that certainly can happen. Or at the very least, you're going to get a lot of that tuition knocked off. So you can think about admissions, not just in terms of how hard it is to get into, but also whether or not you're likely to get financial aid and scholarships from them. And also, this is even more, I would say, for after you've applied and after you've been given a financial aid package. If it does not work for you, if it does not work with your family's income, feel free to reach out to the financial aid office and see if they can do better. You are more than welcome to do that. It never hurts to do that. It never hurts to call the financial aid office and ask. Can't guarantee that they're going to, but you are allowed to do that. Do not think that you're not, all right? So if you get a financial aid package from a college and it's not enough, call them. And the other thing, this is big, some schools are going to have priority merit aid deadlines. To give you an example, University of Illinois is November 1st. Loyola's is December 1st. They are often either November 1st, November 15th, or December 1st. This gives you maximum consideration for merit aid, especially if you have had a strong junior year. I recommend that all students take advantage of these deadlines because that's what will likely get you a very good merit aid package. So as you look at schools, look around for that, ask the admissions reps about that. Some schools are very upfront with it. Some schools, for whatever reason, they put it more in fine print. University of Rochester in Rochester, New York, for instance, is one where you got to scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen to see that they have a December 1st priority deadline. Again, other schools will be very upfront about it, but definitely something to ask and something that I encourage all students to take advantage of. And another thing, as you visit with various colleges, and this will matter even a little more with the small and medium-sized schools than it would with the large schools. But some colleges are going to track whether or not you've been in contact with them. They're going to track whether or not you visited. They're going to keep tabs on that. They will actually start a file for you. They're going to keep track of whether or not you've been in communication with their admissions reps. And we call that demonstrated interest. And that means you're literally showing interest in the school by visiting, or in some cases now that can be for attending Zoom sessions because, it can obviously be hard to visit, or was hard to visit a lot of schools. A lot of schools are still keeping that digital content up. So definitely recommend that you check those things out. Make sure you sign in with the admissions office. Make sure you sign, if you meet with an admissions rep at your school and they hand out like these postcards to you, make sure you fill that out and give that to them. You literally get credit for doing that. And also with that is the idea of demonstrated understanding, which means that you know what the deal is with that school. You know what their programs are. You know what they emphasize, you know what their values are, and that those things come out in your application. And that can go a long way for them to determine whether or not you're a student who's actually interested in this place, or whether you applied to 30 schools and this just happened to be one of them. All right. And when you fill out applications, you're going to see some schools have supplementary essays where you talk about why you want to go there. Why do you want to go to Marquette? Why do you want to go to Loyola? Why do you want to go to Northwestern? And the more that you can show that you have legitimately done your homework on the school, that you know about professors in the subject that you want to major in, that you want to know, that you know about how student life works, how the dorms work. Those are things to really keep in mind as you put together applications. Again, if you can, build relationships with college admissions officers. They are there to help you. That is their job, is to be in contact with students. So if you attend an info session, you get an email address from an admissions rep, stay in contact with them. And again, this will matter more in terms of admissions at smaller schools than larger schools, but it doesn't hurt at larger schools either. So yeah, definitely visit the schools if you can, or certainly take virtual tours and things like that. Ask questions, develop a list of questions before you go and visit a school, develop a list of questions before you meet with an admissions rep, and demonstrate your interest. And again, your knowledge of the school and its programs needs to be evident in your application. That can make the difference between getting admitted and not getting admitted. Okay. All right, so now I have concluded the meat of the presentation, and I'd like to open it up for questions, either in person or for our viewers at home. Any that were directed to you? Let's see. Okay, let's see. Oh, so I click on. Why don't I see my name? I don't think I see any. Oh, someone's asking if I would like a copy of their notes. Okay, I won't click that. I won't click that. All right. Any questions here that I can answer? That's fine. More than happy to talk afterwards. Sure. Sure. Questions? Students over there, any questions? What year are you all? Sophomore? Freshman? Junior? Okay, great. So you've got some time to get into this. Now, where do you all go to school? Okay. Do you know if you have admissions reps? Did you have admissions reps coming through this year? Yeah, colleges visiting. Were there any announcements about that? There were virtual ones. Okay. Well, hopefully next year that's going to go back to normal and you will have admissions reps coming through. But no, I was just going to say, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that. You'll learn a lot about various colleges as they come through. So I would definitely recommend that you do that. And I think it's great that you're doing this. You all have plenty of time to engage with this, especially freshmen and sophomores, but juniors too. I hope this will give you some good ideas about what to think about. But yeah, my main advice to you is definitely take advantage of whatever the school is providing in terms of visits from admissions reps. That'll give you a real good idea of what's out there right now.
You have a question?
All right.
My son is a ninth grader. What suggestions do you give to a ninth grader who wants to have his application stand out?
Okay. So what I would say is, first of all, you're in ninth grade. Get involved. Get involved with whatever your passions are. And this goes for everybody, but especially as a ninth grader, get involved in whatever activities, sports, service, jobs, whatever you're interested in doing, pursue it and look for leadership opportunities. And look for leadership opportunities that you can highlight on your application, and look for leadership opportunities that somebody else is going to write about. A teacher, a club leader, a job supervisor, a service supervisor. That is definitely something that can help you put together a standout application, even at that age. You're not actually going to start the application as a ninth grader. But again, and it does not necessarily mean getting involved in everything. It means getting involved in some things and getting deeply involved in those some things. And again, looking for opportunities for leadership in those categories. That's my main recommendation for ninth graders at this point. But definitely look for things that you can be proud of, that you can talk about on your application for sure. And also hone your writing skills as best you can. That obviously will come out in the essays that you write, even in correspondence with admissions reps. Definitely focus on making yourself as good of a writer as you could possibly be. And those things will definitely help make an application stand out for sure. Other questions, please.
Classified some of the schools as beach versus, what was the other one?
Far reach.
Far reach, or one. Some ideas on how to assess your fit into the reach school.
All
What
right.
I'm really saying is, am I reaching too far, or am I obviously a test score?
Right. Great question. Great question, it's something that's different for different students. I did make this very generalized. When I work with students individually, I look at, I'm going to, take transcripts. I'm going to take test scores. I'm going to take the various activities that they've been involved in, what I know about them from other teachers, things like that. And I will make recommendations based on that. Now, I would say that there are some schools that are really just far reaches for pretty much everybody. The Ivies, Stanford, etc. They famously deny top students all the time. They're getting students who are either meeting some institutional need, like they need an oboe player or a quarterback or a diver or whatever, or they have some frankly hidden agenda that you'll never know what it is in terms of who they admit. Now, that's the far reaches, and the far reaches are, again, totally unpredictable. You can be the valedictorian and still get denied by a far reach. Reaches, and this is different for different students. Like, I will make this recommendation, again, based on GPA, right? And so a reach for a student with a 2.5 is going to be very different for a reach for a student with a 3.5, okay? But basically what that means is that I think that you're slightly going above what you're capable of. And that if you are admitted, you're probably not going to get much in terms of financial aid. Good chance you might get waitlisted, things like that. But again, it's not the same for each student. That's all going to be based on their academic record, based on their level of involvement, based on how well they can put their applications together, how will they interview, all of those things can factor in to what I would say is a reach for one student and a likely or a possible for another. But I'd say generally speaking, if we're talking about a student who, let's say, is like a 3.5 unweighted, the schools with below 15% admission rates are all going to be far reaches. And then a school with, say, a 30 to 20% is probably going to be a reach. But there's other factors that play into that process. Again, what has that student done outside of academics? What are they involved in? Are they going to play a sport there? All of these things can kind of change those distinctions. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, sure.
Yeah.
Grades certainly are a big part of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, the absolute most important thing are grades and the challenge, like the level of classes that you take, right? Those two things count for the most. So I definitely recommend that students take, maybe not all, but as many challenging classes as they're willing to take, at least 2 or 3 as juniors and seniors, while also doing as well academically as possible. Because colleges are going to look at how you challenge yourself within the curriculum that was available to you.
And you also mentioned interviews.
If a school offers an interview, I always recommend that students take advantage of it. Sometimes that's on campus. I mean, there've been plenty that have been over Zoom in the last 2 years. Sometimes admissions reps are local and they'll go do it at like a coffee shop or something like that. And those can be sometimes pretty informal, just kind of shooting the breeze with an admissions officer or a local alumnus, all the way to some pretty intensive conversations where they're asking you hard questions about what you've been involved in and how you've shown leadership and how you've challenged yourself. And a lot of that can also depend on what kind of program students are applying for. But I recommend if a school, sometimes you can do it ahead of time, like ahead of the application. Sometimes you do it around the same time as the application. Sometimes colleges invite you to interview after you've submitted an application. They all have different procedures for it. But I definitely recommend if a student has been offered an interview that they take advantage of it and that they do some preparation for it, whether that's a mock interview with a school counselor. I definitely suggest you do it with somebody who doesn't know you that well. And that also, worst comes to worst, and you didn't have time to do that, my recommendation is students come up with 10 questions ahead of time. Come up with 10 questions about the school ahead of time. You may not ask any of them, but it'll mentally prepare you to have that conversation and to also interview the interviewer as much as they're interviewing you. Great question, please.
There's also some opportunities for unique schools or majors like art school.
Absolutely. Art Institute of Chicago, yep.
Past portfolio days.
Yes,
where you
yes,
can-
yes, yes,
yeah,
wonderful.
they'll show your
Yep.
portfolio to 50 art schools in the country. They all come to Chicago. You can show them your artwork and have an impromptu interview right there. It's really intense, but it's worth it.
It's
if
great.
You want to go in that area.
It's great. They're very good about publicizing that.
Yeah.
If you're interested in being an art major. Yep.
And any of the arts, film, graphic design, you can go and show your work.
Yep.
They get instant feedback if you'll fit in that school.
Yep.
The School of the Art Institute of Chicago is actually in the Art Institute. It's just hidden around the corner. Okay, but if you never knew it was there, it's usually in October.
Yep.
And they also offer, if you're an artist and you're interested, they also offer beauty classes for art students. Yeah, I took some when I was in high school.
Yeah.
It was already, I'd like art classes there.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful opportunity. And there's usually representatives from a bunch of different places
Yes,
throughout the country
There
there.
was like 50 the year
Yeah.
I went.
That's a great thing to take advantage of for sure. Other questions? Any other questions at home? All right. Well, thank you all for coming out, either in person or virtually, and good luck with the college search. I know you're all in different grades and different places, but good luck with that. And yeah, I think my email address was at the beginning of the show. I will put that up on the board again, and I'm happy to ask any question, answer any questions down the line if you're interested. Oops.
If you want to meet, I will wrap up.
All right. Well, I knew I have one other question to answer individually. Happy to do that. But again, my email is drafety@elginacademy.org. So if you think of any questions later, please feel free to reach out and ask. All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Will you mute?
Got it.
Thank you so much. This, is that okay? Okay, I don't know. Here. Thank you so much. This was a joint presentation from Elgin Academy and the Gail Borden Public Library. Remember to use your public library in your college search. We have lots of resources online as well as in person. Don't forget that we can help with essay editing, your college search, scholarship searches, and many different things along the way, including getting volunteer hours in Studio 270. So stop by. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you everywhere.